my pleasure to introduce you to Nicole Schumacher.
All right. So what I've been tasked with telling you about today is the system of the future based on our PDNet and PD Connect data. So since WCI is kind of the new kids on the block at Take here, I'm going to give you just a real quick background on kind of where this information is actually coming from. So WCI founded our industry forums of PDNet and PD Connect about 11 years ago now. And those are actually a collection of large pharmas and small to mid-sized pharma companies which get together on a yearly basis, an ongoing basis, to develop kind of thought leadership around pharmacovigilance and drug safety. So on the next slide you see our PDNet membership. So these were some of the companies that were involved in coming up with the thought leadership that you'll see on the next couple of slides. The PDNet members are our top 25 companies. And on the next slide, you see the PD Connect members, which are the small to mid-sized pharma companies. So across these two memberships, what we have actually identified, this started out as basically heads of safety getting together for thought leadership. As we kind of evolved along the heads of safety path, we actually figured out that there's a huge technology component that needed to be included. So we created kind of a concurrent membership for PD Tech. So PD Tech is actually for the heads of IT for pharmacovigilance representatives. So the information that we've been discussing over the past about 2 years with the PD Tech group has really centered on how the technology people can actually interface best with the business processes that are happening. So today we're going to go through our system of the future that's been developed with these heads of IT at those companies. So what we have here is basically companies have identified 4 major data pools that they need to be able to access to successfully do particularly post-market safety, but also really start to interface with clinical safety for actually one of the first times. There's always been a little bit of a manual interface between clinical and post-market, but actually it's been a fairly divisive grouping between the two sets of data. And as companies are really getting into the more proactive view of safety, so signal detection and safety risk management, it's actually very, very difficult to separate out your clinical data from your post-market data. So once we started looking at that, it's actually more and more data sets that are out there that need to be taken into account when people are really looking for signals across their data. So what we identified with those, both heads of IT and heads of safety, are really what data sets are available to them and what data sets they want to be available to them to kind of create what some companies are terming metadatabases, so huge groups of data. Similar to kind of what Sentinel is trying to achieve at the FDA level, but even more than that on a company level with the company data that each company has, combined with that external data sets from WHO, AIRS, FDA, everyone. So really what we see is that pharmaceutical R&D data is one of those data sets that's currently in-house at most companies that's not interfacing with other data sets. Additionally, the clinical data, the patient behavior and sediment data, and the activity and claims cost data. So this enables companies, once it's all aggregated into one database, to successfully mine for signals across multiple databases. And the reason why we really pursued this was trying to achieve an interface between the business processes and the technology processes. If anyone's ever had to actually implement major systems at major pharmaceutical companies, the business processes are always the ones driving the technology. Unfortunately, business processes are a simple thing to actually implement at most companies. You know, it's a year-long process at most to get some new processes implemented. However, the technology that has to be developed to support that can sometimes take a year to 2 years to 5 years to try to develop. For example, in signal detection systems, we developed processes for the new signal detection systems at a major pharmaceutical company in 3 months. 3 years later, they're still struggling to get the technology to support that decision for the processes. So it's actually the technology people have to start to anticipate what the business people are going to ask them to do within the next couple of years. And that's really where we came up with the system of the future. So talking to these pharmaceutical representatives, looking at upcoming regulations, upcoming trends across the industry, kind of trying to identify exactly where the system of the future is going to go. So basically, what a head of safety is now going to come to the head of IT and ask them for. Unfortunately, the head of safety will come to the head of IT 2 years after the head of IT needs the specifications on that document. And so we're trying to anticipate this long before the head of safety anticipates it, which is kind of something that most companies don't actually think about. So really looking at the 4 different systems, particularly in post-market safety that most companies have to operate on. Single case handling database system, aggregate reporting, signal detection, and safety risk management systems. So the single case handling system, most companies seem to have some kind of a grasp of what they need to do on that, except the regulations are constantly changing. There's constantly updates happening, coming from a process side as well as coming from a regulatory side. So that actually the single case handling system that most companies were really hoping was kind of at a stable state for them is actually still shifting. So we see that here the single case handling system isn't going to drastically change, but there's going to be elements that are going to constantly be added that the IT systems actually need to be anticipating. Things like HL7 that will be interfacing with more systems than we've ever had interfacing before. And we need to be able to pull data in and take data out as fast as possible. E2B to different partners, so interfacing with partner databases, not just with the FDA or the EMA, but actually with other partners. Additionally, this kind of links into some of the EDC systems as well that are becoming more advanced, linking into CRO partners as well. And then starting to get into other language modules and pretty much anything that the regulators can throw at you at a last minute. Linking into that more and more are the aggregate reporting systems. So you're collecting all the data in single case handling, and now you're trying to link that to your aggregate reporting and streamline aggregate reporting. Something that companies are trying to really streamline out are those aggregate reporting processes that take a lot of time and a lot of money. So a lot of that activity is actually a pretty routine activity, compiling massive reports that are pretty standardized across the industry. So basically trying to get a system that actually does that for them is more of a challenge than most companies had anticipated. And once again, the business processes are driving what the technology needs to be doing. So there is kind of a gap between what the technology can actually handle at this time and what's happening from a business process point of view. So things like DSUR, ASR, DSUR switches. Systems have been calibrated previously to be able to support the ASR reports, and now those are going to have to work for DSUR reports. DSUR regulations are coming up fairly soon, and most systems actually aren't calibrated to handle DSUR compilation at this point. Additionally, things like automated aggregate reporting preparation. Like I said, this is a routine activity that companies do all the time. It needs to be something that is streamlined for most companies. I've seen plenty of user requirements go back over to the IT side from the business side, asking for things like automation of aggregate reports. And very, very few of them actually get implemented in time to support the business process. Really where we're seeing a lot of changes right now is the signal detection systems. There's very few signal detection systems that are on the market that actually have signal management components to it. And a lot of those systems were actually developed by technology companies with very little knowledge of signal detection. So, for example, one of the companies we were at, it was a 405-page user requirement that we turned into them after we developed our signal management process. 405 pages. They thought they had a good system. After 405 pages, it was not their system anymore. This is something that's happening both in signal detection and safety risk management. It's something where the IT guys have decided what they think the system should look like, and it's not matching up with the business processes that actually have to utilize that system. So signal detection, a lot of the IT was originally developed actually for the detection of signals. What's coming out of Sentinel and some of the other massive projects is those PRR algorithms and the sophisticated data mining algorithms actually aren't the best way to find confirmed signals for your products. So really identify causal relationships